So Jacob Blake, I'm sure you've seen the videos. We're not going to show the videos, but I'm sure you've seen the videos. Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back in a situation with police. Now, so this situation right here is one of those things where we just don't know that much. We just don't know that much either way. We do not know anything besides the 10, 20-second clip that we saw. We don't know why the police officers had their guns drawn. We don't know what led to the shouting. We don't know what led to the situation. We don't know what led to the escalation. But we do know what we saw in the video, and we know Jacob Blake's priors, and that's really about it right now. So if you don't know, I'll go ahead and read a little bit of the story, and then you can go find the video if you want to. It's all over the place. Kenosha, this is from the USA Today. Kenosha shooting. One officer fired 7 rounds into Jacob Blake's back, and then they talk about the protesters. One police officer fired 7 shots that hit Jacob Blake in the back, law enforcement officials announced Wednesday. The description of the shooting is the first official accounting of what happened in the Sunday shooting in Kenosha that has since spawned protests and outrage. The officer fired his weapon 7 times into Blake's back as Blake leaned into his car. No other officer at the scene fired a weapon. Blake was also tased, according to the DOJ. The account said Blake told officers he had a knife in his possession, although it is unclear whether the officer knew of the knife when he pulled the trigger of his gun. The criminal investigations officers found a knife in the driver's side floorboard of Blake's car, and no other weapons were recovered, according to Wisconsin officials. Okay, so that's where we're at on that. And then Jacob Blake had an outstanding warrant for sexual assault, trespassing, and disorderly conduct in connection with domestic abuse. Police were responding to a domestic incident at a home in the area when Blake was shot. The nature of the dispute is unclear. Viral videos showed a cop shooting Blake while reaching for something in the car. Another video from a different angle showed him brawling with the cops on the pavement. In 2015, Blake was charged with resisting arrest, causing a soft tissue injury to a police officer while pulling a gun at the bar, for which he was facing up to 8.5 years in prison. So that's what we know. That's what we know right now. Okay? And the problem with this situation is that we are on this boiling point. We're on this fever pitch as a society. And we're on high alert for these exact situations, right? African American, presumably unarmed, white cops, dead. And when we're at a fever pitch like this, any situation immediately looks like and becomes a racial situation. Now, we still live in the United States of America. And if you're listening from abroad, just pretend like you live in the United States of America. We have systems in place for this. We have systems in place for this exact situation. Or any bad situation. Anytime a bad person does something bad, we have the system in place to fix it, to sentence them, to bring down justice, right? Is the system always work? No. Is every situation equal? No. But it is unfair to you, and it's unfair to the nation for people to immediately plant their flag on either side of this thing. We are not going to do that on this show. We are not going to say, well, hey, comply with the police or get blasted. And we're also not going to say this cop is a racist murderer who is hunting black people. We're not going to do that, because that is the issue. That is the issue, is that every single time something like this happens, the immediate response is, oh, it's a race killing. Oh, it's racially motivated. And flat out, not every situation is. And it's impossible to solve the real situation if every single time something happens, we sprout some new limb to the tree. It's like a game of whack-a-mole. We're trying to stop the actual police brutality, the actual racially motivated killings. But that's not going to happen if every single time something like this happens, we pop it up as another mole. And we pop it up as, racial killing. It's like, well, maybe not. I mean, maybe, this guy, and again, I'm not saying either way. We're just offering you a devil's advocate look at this thing. I'm not saying that either way is right. I'm just offering you all the facts. There's a big difference in George Floyd even, and we don't even know the results of the George Floyd case. We don't even know the results of the investigation into George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. And this, we certainly don't know the investigation results of this. But there's a big difference in even George Floyd and this guy who they had a warrant for his arrest, a guy with history of resisting arrest, a guy with, like I said, I read the priors. We don't have them up anymore. I read the priors. Domestic abuse, sexual assault, facing 8.5 years, priors to resisting arrest. There's a big difference in cops going to handle a warrant, having someone who you can see in the video is obviously not cooperating, and then reach into the car where we know a weapon was now. There's a big difference in that and let's say the George Floyd case. Now, the other side, I totally understand the whole idea of like, hey, man, but does that mean he should have been shot 7 times in the back in front of his kids? Well, no. If you put it like that, no. No one deserves that. But at some point, you have to give the cops some kind of like, okay, man, I get it. You're doing your job. I understand it. I've seen too many videos of cops being killed in situations where it's like, man, they just didn't want to kill the person. They didn't want to take the person down. And so we don't know what happened. We can't place blame on Jacob Blake. We can't place blame on the officers. All we can do is step back, look at the situation, look at the facts, and say, okay, well, now our system, our government has to fix it. Or they have to see what happened, investigate it, then we'll decide. And you're going to have people who say, well, the system is rigged. Or the system didn't fix the last case. So what now? If that's your response. So what now? Every time something like this happens, we just get to these vigilante groups, or we just let the streets handle it. We just let cities burn every time this happens. Doesn't that seem backwards? Can you imagine if Casey Anthony or O.J. Simpson or some high-profile case, and Casey Anthony gets arrested immediately, and they say, okay, Casey Anthony is being accused of killing her kid, and then people in the streets are like, nope, murder her, kill her, put her in jail. It's like, well, hold on a second. Hold on. I know it sounds bad, but we have a system. We have to rely on the system. If we don't rely on the system, then we end up with the vigilantes and the malicious. Now, the Jacob Blake thing is the foundation for the rest of these stories. It is what the rest of these stories are built on. So let me give you a little bit more insight into why this is happening. Think about the state of the country. The state of the country is we are in a pandemic. We are in a quarantine. People's mental just health is at an absolute all-time low across the board. Depression's at an all-time high. Suicide rates are at an all-time high. Quarantine's been tough for everybody. I think everyone can agree with that. 6 months of a pandemic will do that to you. Mixed into that is a highly polarized presidential election. Probably the second most polarized election in our lifetime, and number one was 4 years ago. This one actually may be more polarized. I'll have to reflect on that in my daily meditations. On top of that, we have an incredibly racially polarized country because of the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and amongst many others. Not saying that those are solved or anything, but those were huge moments of social unrest. So now you have a country who's fully polarized, fully passionate about whatever they believe in, whether it's social issues, whether it's their candidate, their political party, whatever it may be. And you have people who are at a fever pitch, and their mental health is on an absolute string. And you have a lot of people who every single day have been talking about arrest Breonna Taylor's murderers, justice for George Floyd, say their names, 8 minutes, 46 seconds. And all those people are thinking, you know, man, if this happens again, I'm not going to be as quiet. If this happens again, I'm ready. The next time this happens, I'm not going to go as quiet as I did. It won't take me as long to speak up as it did for Breonna Taylor. And then this happens. And without any hesitation, literally zero, I mean, it's still Wednesday, the media and our politicians, Joe Biden, the government, a lot of state politicians, our athletes, our celebrities, have all come out and labeled this a hate crime, racially unjust, and a slaying of an unarmed African-American man in front of his children. So, of course, the echo chamber reacts. And the echo chamber says, all right, it's time. I said it. I said I was going to react stronger and more different than last time. I'm more intense, more impassioned now. The media is calling this a hate crime. Joe Biden, who I'm voting for president, said this is a hate crime. These athletes said it's a hate crime. I'm seeing it on my favorite celebrities' Instagram stories. This is a hate crime. It's my time to throw a Molotov cocktail through a window. And 12 hours later, here we are. That's how we reached this point. Now, I don't have to explain to you how incredibly irresponsible that is and how damning it is to this country. Even Jacob Blake's family has come out and said they don't support the rioting. They support the peaceful protesting. You know, Martin Luther King, we all know what he believed in. And to see our own politicians and our own media inciting this, saying this is a hate crime, this is racially motivated. It's crazy to think that if, you know, I broke into an African American's home and I shot him and robbed his house, it's crazy to think like people would be like, that was racially motivated. It's like, it's just a robbery. You know, if I got murdered tomorrow by an African American, it's like it's not racially motivated. It might just be a killing, you know. Like this cop, and that's the thing that I think people, that's what we talked about with George Floyd, was that the cop may not be a, you know, African-American bounty hunter. This guy might not be a racist murderer. He might just be a bad cop. He might just be, it might just be a bad situation. He might just got a little too trigger happy. Just like this situation. You know, this might not be racially motivated. What if it's just bad police work? Now we're having riots and all of this. For what? We've made up, or the media and these politicians, they've already made up their minds. They've skirted the American way of handling this. They've skirted the investigation. They went straight to the end. They went straight to hate crime. Black versus white. And don't you think that they are doing that for a reason? We know why the media is doing it. Because the media is trying to sell clicks. They're trying to sell papers. They know that that's a whole lot more clicks for them than, all right, guys, here's the situation. Let's wait until the investigation's over. So it's easy to know why the media is doing it. Why are the politicians doing it? To get you riled up. To burn these cities down. Do not get caught up in that, ladies and gentlemen. I beg of you. Do not get caught up on either side. I think it's disgusting, really, on either side. I think it's crazy when it's like, man, here's the two conversations you can have. Conversation one. Conversation one is, hey, man, did you hear about that Jacob Blake guy who got shot? Oh, you mean the guy who was resisting arrest? Yeah, I saw he got shot. Shouldn't resist arrest. It's like, well, hold on a second. Like, you know, hey, that's not a super validated reason. It's not just like resist arrest or like, you know, comply or die. Now, there are layers to that, layers of the priors, the warrant, the actual resisting of arrest, the weapon. So there is a lot that goes into that. But then you have the other side, which is, hey, did you hear about that Jacob Blake guy who got shot? Yeah, the unarmed African-American killed in his own neighborhood, shot 7 times in the back in front of his own children. Yeah, I heard about that hate crime. Both of those situations are wrong. Both of those situations are wrong. If you are on either side of those, peel it back. Take a few steps backwards. The appropriate response is, yeah, I did see that. I heard he had priors. I saw the video. He was, I saw all that. I have no idea what happened before it escalated to that. I have no idea why the cops had their guns out. I don't even know why they were there. We don't even know information on the domestic dispute that they were going there to break up. Let's just wait and see what happens, man. It's a really bad situation. Let's just see what the investigation shows. That's the appropriate response. But that is the last response you will see.